Oh, right. So we decided, Hilda and I, Mike had to go for the previous episode. If you watch episode 6, we talked about not just Top Gun, but we also talked about Return to Oz. And because we talked so much about Top Gun 2, because it was amazing, it left us little time to talk about Return to Oz. So Hilda and I still want to keep talking about it. So here we are, we're doing a bonus episode for Return
Yes,
to Oz
bonus episode.
specifically. So you were so excited, like, man, there were so much things I wanted to talk about. You love
I
this
know.
movie so much. I love your passion for this movie.
I was so bummed that I had some sound issues. So actually I missed part of what you guys were talking about at one point. And so yes, I'm happy that we're getting to chat about it a little longer. Um, this movie though, I know I've said it before, this movie holds such a place in my childhood nostalgia. I I probably couldn't even guess as to how many times I've seen this movie, to be honest. Um, and I think as a kid, one of the things that made the biggest impression on me the first time I saw it is because it was not what I expected, right? We all grew up watching the very old Wizard of Oz, and it's Mike was kind of starting to talk about this, but it's shiny and it's there's music and it's happy and it's even the parts that are scary are minimal, right? And then you have that picture of Oz in your mind. And then you start watching Return to Oz. And the yellow brick road has been completely demolished. And you get to the Emerald City and it's just everything's been turned to stone and it's been ransacked. Um, it's just such a departure from the Oz and Emerald City that we know from the original Wizard of Oz,
Well,
right?
what I love about it is both those movies is that um they are products of their time or the time that they're made. Like,
Yep.
right. So like the movie, like the original musical, right? Like in the was it 50s or whatever it was that was made, it was like every like even scary things is like, the music. Yeah, again, it's a musical and it's all like you said, shiny and happy and so on.
Right.
And then in the 80s, we're like, no, when something's scary, it's motherfucking scary. Like the 80s are like, we're not fucking around here, bro. Like Times Square is not a Disney fucking like look at us, or like Times Square is some scary shit going on in Times Square. So that's what I thought was the best part about it was that they were like, oh yeah, both of these movies are clearly, even though they're in the same cinematic universe, they're very clearly products of their time.
Yeah,
They're
they're
it's
just
it's
they're so different. And I
yeah.
think it really adds a layer to the actual storyline itself, right? Because something has gone drastically wrong in Oz. So the fact that it doesn't look the same is perfect. Like it's
Yeah.
perfect. It's perfect for the
Yeah.
story. It's completely in shambles. Everything is everything is wrong.
I was actually the whole time I was watching the movie, to be honest, I was literally thinking, is this really, they did a good job of making me, the viewer, wonder, did she make it up? Is this really all in her head? Is this like, even at the end where like the girl's like, shh, don't tell the adults. I was like, I think
Yeah,
this might still be
Ozma.
in her head. It still leaves it open for, I guess, interpretation. Maybe not. Maybe they were like, no, no, this is real, but only she can do it. Only she can see this place. And I was like, I don't know. It felt like the filmmakers are trying to be like, maybe it's real, maybe it's not. Maybe it's all in her head.
Or maybe it's
And I was
this
like,
real
oh,
place and you have to protect it.
right, 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 right. So I don't know. I'm still very much on the fence of like, I don't know if this actually happened. For all I
Yeah.
know, there's something that took place in her head. So but yeah, I very much enjoyed this movie. Again, I was telling you off air when we before we decided to do this bonus episode. I was did not like the movie because I thought it was gonna be like, once I saw, like, I was like, man, it's gonna be one of those like cheesy like mid 80s. Unless you saw it as a kid, it's not gonna hold up. And I'm gonna like my experience with Willow. My experience with Willow, I kept the effects that, I don't want to say bad effects because I'm sure at the time they were groundbreaking, but the effects that I'm watching at 20 on 20, during 2022, I'm watching Willow and it kept pulling me out of the movie. Like the effects, I'm like, oh man, that doesn't hold up. Ugh, that's really bad. Ugh, that doesn't.
Yeah.
And the thing was, so I thought that was gonna happen again with this movie, right from the beginning. And then I started watching, and I'm like, the bad effects or the quote unquote effects that don't hold up add to the creepiness of this movie. It
Yeah.
actually helps this movie where I was like, oh yeah, and I really dug the hell out of this movie. I did not think I was gonna like it as much as I
And
did.
I think this movie still holds up. I mean, I easily probably throw this movie on like once a year, maybe. It's just one
I
of
can
those
attest to
where,
the fact I can attest to the fact that it still holds up because I've watched it for the first time now and I like it. So that tells you
yeah,
something that it's not a product of when you saw it. No, it's actually a good movie.
yeah.
Too bad it was a box office. It horrendously bombed.
And
Horrendously
that
bombed.
and that I really do feel was in part to Disney did not put a lot of money into promotion. You know, we were chatting about it, but like they fired the director maybe like a week or two into production. Like he was fired and he called Steven Spielberg, Francis Ford Coppola, and George Lucas for help. And he was like, they convinced Disney to bring him back on, but they were not, you know, they were not happy about how production was going. Murch was taking a long time, like Walter Murch was taking a long time. Um, and you know, time is money in production like this.
Yeah. Yeah.
They had to make some cuts. Like you were talking about how the scarecrow is like so creepy. He was supposed to have a full animatronic face, like the Gump, but they had to make a budget cut. And that's like the scarecrow's face was one of those budget cuts. And that's why his face doesn't move. Right. So there's like
Yeah.
all these
Yeah.
weird things happen. And then when the movie finally came out, they didn't put a lot of money behind the studio. They didn't put a lot into promotion, and it was competing with Goonies. Goonies was the other movie that came out around that time. So, I mean, can you imagine this movie that now has limited production, not production, sorry, limited promotional budget, and now it's got to compete against movies like Goonies that are coming
Yeah.
out within the same month. So
That's so weird.
I
But
feel like
it had a
it's not
$28
like
million
doomed,
budget,
right?
and I want to know what $28 million was in 1984, right? Because the movie came out in '85, but I want to know what
And that's
night like,
that
yeah.
was the budget. The budget was 25 mil. It only made 11 million. So it made
But
less.
yeah, well, the thing is, it. I'm sure the budget was 25 million, but it went to 28 million. That's what the Wikipedia says. 28 million
Yeah.
in 1985,
And it
1980.
made less than half. It made 11 million. But I think it was almost doomed before it even hit theaters because they weren't putting money behind promotion. They weren't putting, you know, they just weren't. And I think they were over it before it was even finished, which I think is really unfortunate because I think it's such a great movie. I really do.
Let me see. So it's about so is that right? That can't be right. So 5 million, is that, am I correct? 5 million in 1984 is equivalent to the purchasing power of about uh so that's not what I'm asking. I'm not asking that. But 20, I said 28 million, correct? It was 28 million.
Yeah.
28
Yeah, that's what
million.
it ended up
28.
costing.
Yeah. It's about $80 million today. So the movie cost $80 million to make in today's dollars. Again, big deal, man. And for
Yeah.
it to get back, you know, it's like the equivalent of it getting back 30 million when it cost 80 million to make. You're like, ugh, God.
But hey, it was a record breaker. So it came out 46 years after The Wizard of Oz. And according to the Guinness Book of Records, it was the longest time between sequels.
Is that still the case?
No,
46 years?
I can't remember exactly what movie broke that record, but that record was broken, I think, somewhere in the 90s, something like that.
I wonder what it was now.
I'd have to go back and look it up, but
First
yeah.
time in sequels. I'm gonna look it up now because I'm one of those I can't let it go.
You know,
Um,
another fun fact, Tim Burton has actually acknowledged that Jack Pumpkinhead was a really big inspiration for him behind Jack Skellington.
but yeah, I mean, it seems kind of
You
obvious
can
now.
see it. Well, I mean,
Yeah,
sometimes things are obvious, but they're not. But he's actually he's actually acknowledged that Jack Pumpkinhead was a lot of inspiration. For
The longest one is Bambi and Bambi 2.
So that's the other one. Yeah. Okay. Yes. So that one is the one that actually broke Return to Oz's record.
64 years.
Yeah.
2000. Yeah, it came out. Apparently, it came out, and I didn't know Bambi. I'd never even heard of Bambi 2. If you would have told me it existed, I would have been like, oh, I'm sure it's one of those direct to sequel, movies that came out like a year after the.
I
But
think
it was not.
I think it was a straight to VHS.
Well, it came out in 2006. So if Bambi 2 was direct to VHS, that's very. I don't know if you're gonna make your money back because you're doing it direct to a format that no longer exists in 2006.
Well, maybe it was the straight to clear. I'm aging myself. It was direct to home sales.
Yeah, direct to home
On your
sales.
device of choice.
But that's a big. I mean, can you imagine? Like, can you imagine being that one kid who saw Bambi in theaters? Like, I'm waiting for this motherfucking sequel, and now you're 70 years old, and you're like, it's happened. It's finally happened. It's finally happened. I don't know. I very much enjoyed I very much enjoyed this movie. I didn't know it was that chick from The Craft. I didn't know it was her.
Yeah, this was Fairuza Balk's first feature film. She had done some smaller stuff before, like I think maybe episodes of a show or like TV commercials or something. But this was her first film, and she beat out tons of people who auditioned for the role of Dorothy in this.
She did a great job, though. I will say she did a great job. I even remember saying, man, she's got beautiful eyes. And of course, now knowing who she is as an adult, I'm like, oh yeah, she does have beautiful eyes. Like she really does have beautiful eyes.
Yeah, Fairuza Balk. Yeah, she was great in this. And you know who had originally been approached to be the Gnome King was Christopher Lloyd had been approached.
Oh, okay.
To be the Gnome King, and so was Tim Curry.
Tim Curry was doing all that sci-fi shit. He was doing Legend. He was doing all that sci-fi shit where he was like, just put me in makeup. I'll rock it. I'll make it rock.
But no, yeah. Return to Oz, man. I'm really glad you enjoyed it, Neri. I really am.
It was really good. It was really good.
I was like, this could go either way, right? I was like, either Neri could love this, or because he's such a Wizard of Oz fan, he could hate it. But I had a feeling.
Oh no, it stuck true to the book a lot more so than the musical. And again, I love the musical, but
that's why I thought you would like it, because I was like, okay, it's going to talk about, Ozma is going to be introduced.
Yeah.
I was like, Neri's a fan of the books. He's going to dig Return to Oz. So.
Yeah. And to the audience, I haven't read all of the Oz books because there's like 13 or 14 of them, some crazy amount of number like that. But I have read this first 3. So and I reread the first one again like 3 months ago, and in reading it again 3 months ago, there was stuff that I didn't catch the first time, and I was like, and I'm not a big reader, so I asked my friend Missy. I was like, hey, I read the Wizard of Oz, but I read it again, and there was stuff that I didn't see the first time that I didn't pick up the first time. And she's like, yeah, that's what happens. And I'm like, really? Like, I really didn't, like, that's how dumb I am about reading. I assumed that once you read it, you read it. And they're like, no, you'll pick up on stuff. I'm like, I knew movies was like that. I'm like, no, but it's still the same principles. It's a story that you're hyper focusing on some things, and some things you're not. So I'm like, oh, okay. But I very much enjoyed the hell out of this movie. I did. Yeah. This is probably, I'm thinking back of the old school movies. I think, what are the old school movies that we've done so far? Hold on. Can you tell me that on this podcast?
So we have done Back to the Future. We have done
The Substitute was one.
Black Christmas, The Substitute, Willow.
Okay.
And Scrooged.
Okay. So yeah, I was gonna say this might be my favorite, but of the ones that I had, again, Black Christmas was trash. Willow had its faults, which, by the way, to the listener, we talked about this off air. The TV show Willow is so good.
So good.
And I've only watched the first episode, but it's so good because as I'm watching this episode, I'm like, this is what the original movie could have been like if it was made today. Like, I thought I was really, really impressed. And again, I just mean that the effects hold up so that the story can be told without it taking you out of the movie, without the effects or the lack of effects taking you out of the movie. But it was fantastic, man. It was fantastic. All right. Well, thank you very much for checking out the bonus episode. Hope you guys enjoyed this bonus episode. Hilda and I just wanted to keep talking about this movie because I really enjoyed this fuck out of this movie. I'm really gonna show it to my wife and see what she thinks about showing it to the kids.
Absolutely.
She's very much more she's more cautious than I am. I'm like, yeah, she wants to. My daughter wanted to watch Jurassic World when it came out when she was like 6 years old. And I'm like, yeah, let her watch Jurassic World. Who cares? And she's like, that's a scary movie for a kid. And sure enough, she did not. My daughter was like, this is awesome. And I was like, okay, good. So I don't know. We'll see what happens. Thank you very much for checking out this bonus episode. Follow us on all social media platforms. It's at Movie Bros Pod. For everything except Twitter is Movie Bros Pod _ at the end. So, anyways, thank you guys for checking us out. Check out Hilda's gamer girl tag, which is gamer. Was it?
Tabletop gamer girl.
Tabletop gamer girl. I'm sorry. My eyesight is really bad, so I have to zoom in all the way to be able to read. That's how
no
bad
worries,
my eyesight
Mary.
is.
No worries. I'm here to help.
At Tabletop Gamer Girl. Anyways, thank you guys for checking us out. And check out geekbros.net. Thank you very much. Bye.